The roundtable on racial justice took place this morning here at Houston City Hall. We were able to convene a host of community leaders and law students around the city, and in fact around the country, to talk about issues that we care deeply about, issues from criminal justice reform, voting rights, housing, environmental racism, economic development. And the roundtable's purpose was really to bring together leaders on these issues and experts on these topics to really build consensus around policy issues that each of these groups can take back to their communities and rally around. At the end of the day, for us, the rich conversation that took place there at the roundtable is something that we hope will not stop here, but will continue over the years in the coming months and weeks ahead. And we hope NBLSA will be able to play an active role in continuing to facilitate that dialogue. The meeting brought together the president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We know them as the NAACP, who is also the dean of the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. We brought together the chief of police, the chief of staff to the new district attorney, Kim Ogg. We had a representative from the Housing Authority. We had students from local law schools. We had a member from the Sierra Club. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee stopped by and offered words of wisdom and remarks on her role as a federal representative, talking very directly to these issues. And so we were just really grateful to have almost every sector of society, the faith community was present, to be there to engage on so many of these topics and to really highlight the intersectionality that so many of these issues bring up. And so our hope is that that kind of rich dialogue and conversation and partnership will be something that can be replicated in years to come, but it's also that will have lasting impact for the communities that we care about and the communities that we serve. You know, one of the topics that, I should say themes, that came up throughout our meeting was the theme around equity and access and equality and justice. These are things that are hallmarks of not just the institutions that we serve, but hallmarks of our country's founding documents. And so as law students, people who will take an oath to support our founding documents, to support our Constitution, those documents and that founding is rooted in an unequivocal understanding that all people, regardless of who they are or where they come from, should have equal access to clean water, to good food, to good housing. And the list goes on and on and on. And it's our role as lawyers and as students and as individuals who have conscience to continue to push our government and to push our institutions to make good on that promise. And so our hope is that moving forward, we'll all be able to play our role in making sure that every city and every rural community around the country, in fact around the world, will be able to have access to that promise, a promise of equality and justice for all. And that's something that I think brought a lot of us to law school. And I think it's something that resonates in the hearts and minds of so many of us and so many of the people that we care deeply about. So in 5 to 10 years, I hope we're not having this same conversation. I hope we're going to be able to say that we've made good on some of these promises. And the work that we planted, the seeds that we planted 5 to 10 years ago, are coming to fruition. And there's a harvest that we're able to reap as a result of that.
We are in our 49th annual convention here in Houston, and we're kicking it off with this event. And we've had a very robust conversation about criminal justice reform, environmental justice, and also housing segregation. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and we'll go ahead and get started with Police Chief Acevedo as he gives a couple of words.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, good afternoon. First of all, I want to commend the organization, the association, for taking the time to have these timely discussions. And I think these critical discussions that, quite frankly, it disproportionately absolutely impacts communities of color. Whether that color is Hispanic in terms of, I call myself cinnamon on the outside, chocolate on the inside. You were there the other day when I said that. One of our council members. Well, thank you very much. But it's important, and quite frankly, when you look at young people, I want to just first of all commend the young men and women in here that are really the future of our nation. So let's give you a big hand. That you understand that but for the grace of God go I, and you understand that you could have, any one of us could have made a different turn. And so just because it doesn't impact us directly, or we were some of the lucky ones that made it to what I say to your destination, which is law school for all of you, we need to care about the people that haven't made it to that destination. And so I'm excited that we are leading the way here in Houston, that we're having the conversation, that Senator John Whitmire actually has some legislation that will focus bond on what it should focus on, which is whether or not the person is a flight risk. And I think even more importantly is what is the person's risk in terms of public safety, so that we're thoughtful, and I'm glad that have been part of this conversation. And the last thing I want to say from the criminal justice standpoint, there's a lot of cogs in the wheel of criminal justice. And unfortunately, the police departments take a lot of the criticism, a lot of it rightfully so. But a lot of the issues as it relates to wrongful convictions, which is, there's a difference between erroneous convictions and wrongful convictions. Erroneous is what most of them are, where it's eyewitness identification, they got something wrong. But wrongful convictions, a lot of it's placed on the feet and on the foot of police officers and police departments, when in fact the criminal justice wheel has a lot of cogs in it. And there are a lot of critical cogs that have an impact on these discussions. And I'm proud of the fact that police chiefs across this country and police departments are taking the lead in terms of looking at the bail reductions and bail reform, in terms of looking at sentencing reform. One of the biggest, I think, honors of my life was actually meeting with the President Obama, and representing all American law enforcement about 6 months ago at the White House inside the Roosevelt Room in the West Wing. And having police chiefs and, again, police executives being the ones that saying that we need to separate nonviolent offenders and treat them differently, which is what bail is really all about, from those that are actually doing physical harm and serious harm to our community. And so I'm proud to be here. I'm really proud anytime young people get involved, and some of us are older folks that are here supporting them. But anything that we can do in the Houston Police Department, we stand with you. So, en español no van a usar nada de aquí, ¿verdad? Okay, and then I said in Spanish earlier that I loved everybody in the room. So watch Univision tonight. So thank you all for having me. And again, folks, we're not going to get it right all the time. We are not a perfect organization in Houston or any organization, but we should never, ever stop seeking perfection. That's the only way we're going to achieve improvement. So thanks again for having me.
Hi, my name is Asada Richards, and I'm the director of the Sankofa Research Institute and the vice chair of the Emancipation Economic Development Council. And I do want to thank this organization for bringing this conversation to Houston and challenging us to continue to think about these issues. And I'm reminded of what Dr. King said. He said that it's not the question of can we solve these issues. And the question he was saying is not an issue of can we solve this issue of poverty. He said it's a question of will we, right? That we must have the moral commitment and we must have the diligence to ask ourselves these hard questions and challenge ourselves to move beyond where we are to where we know our city, our nation, our state, and this really our world needs to be. And so I'm never discouraged. I'm living in a community that is squarely facing the issue of gentrification and residential displacement. But we are committed at the Emancipation Economic Development Council to preserve and revitalize Third Ward based on the rich African American history and culture of a people who took little of nothing and made something rich, beautiful, and magnificent of it. I live in a community where it's the first public park in the state of Texas. I live in a community where Texas Southern University exists. I live in a community where the Riverside Negro Hospital was founded. I live in a community of people of strength, courage, and resilience. And I am proud and I'm encouraged. Despite the challenges we face in this city, we are on a path to a new dawn in Houston, a new dawn where equity and justice is our hallmark. We talk a lot about about diversity. There's nothing interesting about diversity. There is something magnificent about equity, right? You can put a bunch of different things together, but can you equitably treat all of those different people in your communities with a sense of justice? So I want to say to these young people, when the young people were standing in the civil rights movement and saying, we want our moment, and Ella Baker said, the only way you'll get your moment if you step from that leadership which is holding you back and you create your own platform for leadership and you find your own vision. And that's when the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was formed. And so I say to these young people, don't look to others to find your way. Chart your own way. We're the most educated, the most advantaged, the most privileged generation that our community has ever seen. And it won't be a question of will we have individual success? Will our incomes go up? Will we buy homes? The question will be, will our lives benefit the lives of others in our community, others who did not have our opportunities? And so I say to young people, we have a new legacy, and the legacy is about place and community and people. And I want to be part of that legacy. So thank you for inviting me. We won't stop these questions. We will continue. I want to thank everyone from the Emancipation Economic Development Council who came out here today. We're not giving up. We're not even discouraged. We get a little tired, but we never give up, because we know that with God on our side and with all the conviction in our hearts that we shall win, and we will not be the victims of fate in Third Ward. We will chart our own path, and we will revitalize and preserve Third Ward for generations to come. And you will come into our neighborhood, and you will come into our African American community, and you'll be proud to be there no matter who you are. And that is the vision that we're moving towards. So thank you today.
Thank you. My name is Vivian King. I am the Chief of Staff for Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg. I am very proud to be here. I'm proud to go back to the Harris County DA's office where I started my legal career in 1992 after being a proud graduate of Thurgood Marshall School of Law. And I'm very proud of the young people here for having this discussion. I am kind of talking to them on the side and saying we have to do more than discuss, because sometimes I've had these discussions for about 37 years since I've gotten out of college in 1980, and it's time to act. But one of the things I'm really proud of, in the first 47 days of the new administration of Kim Ogg, we implemented the misdemeanor marijuana diversion program. Some people have called that decriminalization. It is not decriminalization. The DA has the right to pre-charge, divert people around the jail. Isn't it exciting that we have about 10,000 people charged with misdemeanor marijuana per year, and now they do not have to be arrested? They do not have to go to jail. They do not have to post bond, hire a lawyer. They have the opportunity in the first 90 days to take a class, a 4-hour cognitive learning class, and you won't have a record at all. Isn't that exciting? That's very exciting for me. It doesn't stop marijuana from being illegal. It doesn't stop when a police officer stops you that it's not probable cause to smell marijuana or find it in your car. But once they put you in the back of the patrol car, you can now be diverted, no matter what your criminal record is. That's really good for our community. I know that Ms. Sheila Jackson-Lee is here, so I was going to say something on bond, and I will come up after she speaks.
Thank you. How are you?
Thank you.
Good.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Just call me, I'll do it. Okay, thank you.
Just give me a copy.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Miss Judge, Miss Attorney Vivian King, dear friend, and certainly very grateful for your affiliation with the District Attorney's Office and District Attorney Kim Ogg. To all of those who gathered, President of the NBLSA, Dr. Douglas, the representatives from the City, Housing and Urban Development, our very effective and constructive Chief of Police. I am delighted to be here with the dynamic NBLSA and all of the officers as you have gathered, and certainly to the President and organizer. Thank you, Ms. Davis, for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership and smiling, of course. And thank you for accepting my schedule. I am 2 minutes away from the plane door closing, going back to Washington. So let me be very clear that in the context of issuance of subpoenas under FISA courts or Title III, which all of you lawyers know, I can, of course, be engaged in a subpoena if I am in the DEA and FBI under Title III, but in FISA court is the review of a foreign agent. And so I'm going to say that unless this president comes forward with accurate information, I'd ask all young lawyers to be as questioned as they can. President Obama did not wiretap the present president of the United States of America. I wanted to make that breaking news as I begin my remarks. Let me thank this great organization that was organized in 1968. Every law student of African American heritage should be proud to call themselves a member. I know that I was a member of the Black American Law Students Association. It was called BALSA. Even though I just graduated from law school about 5 minutes ago. For those who are calculating, at the University of Virginia School of Law, that is an organization that I cherished, wonderful memories of the members that were there, and the time and the era that we were there. It was a crucial time for us to be, if you will, a vocal on the battlefield, addressing the question of civil rights, addressing the question of equity among law professors, recruitment of students, employment, all of these issues which you continue to do today. And I would suggest that this organization is needed now more than it's ever been needed before, articulate and to promote the educational, professional, political, and social needs and goals of the black law students, foster and encourage professional competence, improve the relationship between black law students, black attorneys, and the American legal system. As I indicated to my good friend, President Davis, I wanted to also extend an invitation to this organization to again come to the United States Congress as they have done. You are at the annual legislative conference. We thank you for the involvement. But I really want to sit down with the leadership of the organization as the ranking member, the lead Democrat on the Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security Investigations Committee. I will say I'm the first woman on that committee, and therefore I wanted to make sure that we engage really around the legislative spin. And so I wanted to include your input on our sentencing reduction legislation that we almost got passed at the end of the last session. Sadly, we did not, which was going to see 50,000 individuals under law be released over the next 10 years, 5,000 per year, and through sentencing reduction. Prison reform, which was going to create a pathway out of the federal system, hoping to be a model for the state system, which included parental skills, job training, counseling, education, that would actually be required parts of the pathway of those who would be released, and certainly connecting them to a job. I just recently came back from Atlanta a couple of months ago and visiting their federal prison that is in Atlanta, and they were doing a welding class, and the happiest people in the prison were those inmates that were in that class on the way of leaving with a skill that they knew that they would be able to use. We were either going to punish people for the rest of their lives or seek at least a level of rehabilitation. We have also written a juvenile justice bill that I believe will continue to change the matrix on juvenile justice, which is why punishment and sanctions without incentives, and to be able to move those juveniles who would be receptive to incentives to do what is right as opposed to not. We would hope that you would join us on that. I would also hope that you would join me on legislation that changes the concept of women inmates who give birth inside the prison to maintain their child for a pilot period of time in the federal prison would be the first attempt to establish that pilot. And I'd really like the support of this organization as a humane and rational way to do this. Lastly, let me indicate that I am a member of the House Bipartisan Police Strategies Working Group, which is a reflection of the bill that John Conyers and myself introduced, all in a reflection of Black Lives Matter and the concern of police-community relations all over America that impacted all people, and that is the Law Enforcement Trust and Integrity Bill that deals with viewing police from a perspective of being guardians as opposed to warriors, to provide funding for accreditation, and to provide training and recruitment and a lot of things that I think would be very positive. We will be holding a hearing through that national committee here in Houston in the next couple of months, and I'll be calling upon leaders in the criminal justice system to testify in closed session to that particular committee. So I would just want to say to you that the breaking news is that we're going to Washington to work and to pass criminal justice reform. We encourage you to be part of that. We're also going to Washington to ensure that the budget process that is being offered by the President of the United States really reflects the needs of Americans throughout this country. And the last thing that I would say is that we have heard all of the new news around a new affordable care system. I think it is important for people who uphold justice to be concerned about those who will be left out of access to health care and to use legal skills to be ensured that civil rights takes place in all parts of our life, and you as law students and future lawyers can do so. I told President Davis that I would indicate that I now am the newly elected chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. That means we look forward to working with you in an energized manner. And one of the programs that I would look to bring to expand, having spoken to a federal court judge, is to expand the opportunities across the nation for internships at the federal judge level. Law clerks are and are paid, but you can have as many as 5, 6, or 7 interns that really change the lives of law students who are 1L or 2L, and I hope that we can establish that program. Thank you also very much for the great leadership that you're engaged in, and I don't know, I thought something was happening on Thursday. Is that accurate?
Your Hall of Fame induction.
So let me thank you all. I don't know if you want to say it, and I can just say thank you.
I do want to make the announcement that on Thursday evening, at our A.J. Cooper Legacy Reception and Hall of Fame induction, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee will be inducted into the NBLSA National Hall of Fame. So we're excited about that and grateful for your service.
I won't announce it until that day, but I am absolutely humbled by the acknowledgement. The reason is I am truly sincere about how much I loved BALSA. That's what it was. So don't start calculating time frame, but I loved BALSA. And we were very close at the University of Virginia, and I also spent a final year at Yale Law School. But we just loved the camaraderie and the work that was done, and we did a lot of good things, as all of you have done. And so I'm so privileged and honored to receive your honor, and hopefully we'll continue to uphold those standards. God bless all of you, and God bless this great organization. God bless the United States of America. Thank you for having me. Pastor, thank you. On to the airport. Thank you all very much.
Okay. I just said one more thing. I kind of yielded. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you. I yielded the floor to our great Congresswoman because she needs to travel to D.C. The second thing I'm excited about with the Harris County District Attorney's Office is we are right now training our prosecutors to deal with the bail issue. We are not a part of the bail lawsuit, as we discussed earlier, because we don't set bail as prosecutors, but we do follow the orders of the courts. We have 22 criminal felony courts. we have 16 misdemeanor courts. That's 38 courts dedicated to criminal justice in Harris County, and they're all voted upon usually with during the governor's cycle. Most of them are all 16 misdemeanor courts, and about 19 of the felony courts come up during the governor's cycle. So y'all need to be aware of that. And since our governor has been Republican since Ann Richards, all of those judges are Republicans. So keep that in mind in your vote, okay? I want you to know that Kim Ogg has made a statement to the federal court to say that we support, as district attorneys, we support all misdemeanor people, all people charged with misdemeanor offenses get pretrial bonds, which is personal recognizance bonds, unless it's family assault and the victim of the family assault has made a magistrate's order of protection. They've said that there's an ongoing threat and we need more. So then the bail will be higher and there will be different conditions. But generally on everything else, prostitution, marijuana, whatever it is, it will be, we recommend pretrial bond. And if it's a felony, depends on what it is, it will be commensurate with their level of flight risk and whether they've come to court when they're asked. Because for cases, it's really to guarantee that your appearance in court. That's what a bond is for, and for the safety of the community. So that's our position. We will follow the orders of the courts, but if they care about our position, that's our position on it. So I hope you're excited about the marijuana program. We don't encourage you to smoke marijuana, but we do know that you will be diverted if you're not committing any other crime, and it is still a crime, and we're not decriminalize it. Thank you, young people, for having this conversation. I look forward to your work in the future. I want to see you guys running for office. I want you to, and we'll be here to help you, won't we, Dean Douglas? Yes. All right, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sandra Guerra Thompson. I'm a professor at the University of Houston Law Center and director of the Criminal Justice Institute there. And I am delighted to be here to take part in the conversation on bail reform. In my view, this is the biggest civil rights issue of our day. And we're very fortunate that there have been a lot of people working towards this legislative session. And a bill this week was filed by our own Houston Senator, John Whitmire. It's SB 1133, and it's filed in the House by Representative Andrew Murr of the Kerrville area, and that's HB 3011. And it's critical that we support this legislation because we're not going to get any improvements in the bail system until we do that. And it's truly a modern and effective measure that's being promoted in this bill. And I just want to say to the law students that one of the things that I see from the work that I've been doing trying to get this legislation filed in Texas is that there's a lot of work that we can do in terms of advocacy. And I think that this is one area where our community has not been galvanized, and and if there's anything I can do to help educate, because gosh, black law students, wow, what a powerful force for change that you can be if you get together and make appointments to go talk to legislative aides, legislative directors, or the representatives who might be willing to speak to you. To know how to do that and to recognize the value of that would be huge. So if I can help in that way, please let me know. We've got to get this legislation passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm James Douglas, Dean of the Thurgood Marshall School of Law and also President of the Houston branch of the NAACP. I want to talk somewhat to the law students. I always tell people race has been an issue since the day Columbus set foot in America and discovered he was not in Asia. But race has been an issue. One of the things I always tell people is I don't throw darts against a concrete wall. One of the things that I'm going to ask each of you as a law student and future lawyer is to understand that the purpose of law is to maintain balance, to maintain order. You can't change laws until you change public opinion. Lawyers don't change public opinion. It's social activists that change public opinion. So as you prepare yourself to become a lawyer, also prepare yourself to get involved and become an advocate. Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston could not have done what they did without people like Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther King, Ralph Brown, and others who were the social activists and changed public opinion. Activists change public opinion, then lawyers can come in and describe what that new rule ought to be. We are where we are with small amounts of marijuana because social activists have been working for years to change public opinion. We have same-sex marriage because social activists worked for years to change public opinion. So as you move through law school and you learn the law, also come to understand that if you're going to be a real change agent, you can't just take your JD and go to court. You're going to have to get involved in the community, and you're going to have to become a community leader. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Torrey Gunsalli. I'm the president and CEO of the Houston Housing Authority, and I'd like to thank the National Black Law Students Association for hosting this important conversation. I think in far too many forums and far too many communities, these are taboo topics, and these are difficult conversations, and people aren't willing to have them. So I applaud you for having the difficult conversations, and I think we need to keep having these conversations. But we also need to take action. When Asada was speaking, I thought she was going to go in a different direction with her MLK quote, and I thought she was going to talk about bending the moral arc towards justice. And there is so much injustice in the world, and specifically in the cities that we see throughout this country, where you have unequal and separate neighborhoods. And there are lifetime impacts to the people who grow up in those neighborhoods, who live in those neighborhoods. And there is a lot of debate about what's to be done, but I think that nobody can deny that what needs to be done is justice needs to be brought to that situation. And we need to improve those neighborhoods that haven't had access to good jobs, to good food, to good environmental health, to good education. And so those neighborhoods need to be improved. But at the same time, there are large segments of the country and in the city of Houston that people don't have access to. And we also need to open up access. And so I think those are the two things that I see around housing segregation that we can work towards, and we can put our shoulder to the wheel and try to make progress in making neighborhoods better, and also providing more neighborhoods of opportunity for people to live in. So thanks again for having this conversation, and I hope you have a great conference. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Art Browning. I'm the secretary of the Houston Regional Group of the Sierra Club, and I'd like to thank the NBLSA for asking me to come talk about environmental justice. When they first invited me, I thought, why me? Well, maybe somebody who has actually lived with that could better address it. However, it is important for people like me to talk about it, because when I told someone that I was going to address the issue of environmental injustice, I was asked, what's that? Which means that education is very important among people who don't live with it, people who live with privilege, even though they may not recognize that they're doing that. Here in town we have someone who could much better address that, I want to make sure that everyone's aware of the role of Dr. Robert Bullard at Texas Southern University, who's known as the father of environmental justice. He's written many books, at least one of which talks about the legacy in Houston of having landfills and incinerators and garbage treatment plants in poorer communities, and especially communities of color. Most of them have been black. The Sierra Club works in how do we fight that sort of stuff. The Sierra Club is not alone. We're trying to educate ourselves about equity, as Asada called it, and also work in coalition with organizations in Houston that are living in these situations. For instance, the TEJAS, which is Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services, Texas Campaign for the Environment, several others exist there. So we work in coalition with them to speak out against programs that may perpetuate this inequity of siting of environmentally damaging facilities, not only things like garbage dumps, but also refineries. Manchester neighborhood is becoming well known as one of the neighborhoods where there's a high school right underneath many of the refineries. And so we're trying to make that happen. How does that happen? It's economics a lot of times. One of the things that I emphasize is that these decisions that are made about where to put things have to do with only dollars and cents. They don't pull into account external costs, the true cost to health of citizens who live in the shadow of these bad things. Now, what can you do as law students? There are quite a few laws, regulations that are on the books that need to be prosecuted for. I'm worried very much now in the last few months about the rollback of regulations. The current administration has appointed a director of the EPA who practically wants to take it apart. And our own ex-governor has been put in charge of the Department of Energy, I believe it is. He talked about dismantling that. So we're going to have to step up our activity as activists, as the dean talked about activism on the local level. City governments are also going to need to step up in defending their environmental rights. I'm a little disturbed at a law that passed 2 years ago in the legislature that limits the role, the effectiveness of city governments in defending environmental rights. So we need to look at that. I am, however, encouraged when I look around at young people who are becoming more aware of environmental issues in the schools. Schools are educating them about that. We have people my age have capable hands to pass the torch to in defending our environment, and also in recognizing that economic injustice that's going on as well as racial injustice. So thank you again for asking me, and I'd welcome any further contacts. That's one thing that I've gotten out of this roundtable, is meeting more people who are concerned about social justice. Thank you.
Before I invite the pastor to come up and lead us in a word of prayer, let me say thank you to each of the panelists, particularly to members of the National Executive Board for being here, local law students, particularly Kanae Turner, the National Attorney General, Maureen Edibor, for being here and organizing this really important conversation. Our hope was that this morning the convening would provide an opportunity for partnerships to form, for robust and rich dialogue to happen, begin here but not end here. And so our hope is that members of the local Houston community will continue to interact and to engage, to pursue justice on these really important issues. And my hope is that the National Black Law Students Association will continue to serve as a partner to members of this community in months and years to come. So thank you for your work. We invite you to join us the rest of the week. We'll be at the Westin Galleria Hotel for our 49th National Convention. You all are invited, and we hope to see you there. So Pastor, if you could provide a word of prayer.
Good afternoon now. Thank you to the National Black Law Students Association and to each of the guests who are present with us this day. I have been asked to pray, and I will do just that, but I will want, if you allow me, I'll say one word. It is my contention that I serve as the associate pastor at the Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church has, since its inception on the campus of Texas Southern University nearly 55 years ago, under the leadership of the Reverend William Alexander Lawson, been a church that has actively engaged in civil rights movements and seeking not just racial justice, but social justice as well. I contend as a person of faith that the answer to the issues that continue to plague us along with racial and social justice injustices, can be found in our sacred text, the Gospels. A lawyer happens to ask a question of Jesus. He says, "What is the greatest commandment?" Jesus answers, "To love God with all your heart, mind, and soul." He says, "The second is likened unto it." And if you are not a person of faith as I am, you don't have to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, but you can do the second. We can all do the second. The second is to love your neighbor as yourself. And until we love the neighbors as ourselves, until we find value and worth in others who may not look like us, we will continue to perpetuate injustices. Our societies will continue to be plagued by the same problems because we have not found the worth in humanity. And so I contend that love of other is the answer, and we must continue to search for that. With that, I'll pray to that end. God our Father, we thank you for this time of sharing and enlightenment. Thank you for the work of the National Black Law Student Association that has joined us together for this opening of this convention. We pray now that you would continue to find each of us faithful in the tasks that you have assigned to our hands, that we might bring forth a kingdom here on earth that is equitable and just, that we might recognize the value in others who may not look like us, may not come from the same backgrounds as we, but still find worth in their humanity, so that we might afford them the rights and privileges and opportunities that all children of God should be afforded. We thank you for this time of sharing and pray now that the work will continue even as we leave from this place, to the end that justice would roll down like rivers and righteousness like a mighty stream. And we thank you for it all. In your name, amen.